Awesome, great. So, Jonathan, as you mentioned before NeRFs, there were different methods of photogrammetry. Even Apple has some efforts in this field with reality capture.
Hmm.
What do you think is the main difference between NeRFs and photogrammetry?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and I I would like to describe this in more detail in some videos, but I think what early on I keep seeing when people I've been posting nerfs for, this is only useful once I'm able to get a mesh out of it. And they are missing the fact that a nerf is never a mesh. It's a radiance field. It's a volumetric representation versus a photogrammetry is creating. If I want to describe this room, it's a bunch of triangles, and then you map some textures on those triangles, and in what you're doing in photogrammetry is you are figuring out you're triangulating surface points, and then you're turning them to a bunch of optimized triangles to describe something. And so it's just inherently different versus everything in this room. Even the blank space is a cube of something. Maybe there's a cube with no radiance, no color, no light, nothing, but it's something in the model. That's not with photogrammetry. And the limitation of photogrammetry is you need parallax, you need, which you already need, you also need a nurse, but you need to like model a room. You're only going to capture what you got a lot of coverage at different angles of, or I think outside versus a nerf. It gets like everything. It gets the background, it gets perspective, there's no textures. It's those radiances. So reflectance and specularity, you don't have to manually do any of that. It's just trained into this representation. However, a mesh is right now is much more useful in let's say creating a video game, creating a XR experience where people want to interact with an object. There's not really like a defined object in NeRF because everything is an object. You could say every little point in space becomes a little object. So you can't just like pick up a vase as a NeRF, but you could blend the two because now we're seeing them in you're starting to see nerfs in like Unreal Engine. You could nerf the woods or like a forest or a beach or something like that as your backdrop scene, and then you could put in photogrammetry triangle meshes that you want to interact with. But now I haven't had to, you didn't have to. I think of video games, you end up with like a sky sphere. You're like you're like a sphere you're inside of, and then they've mapped the scene to the back of the sphere to make you feel like you're somewhere. Well, imagine if that sky sphere had parallax movement, reflections, all the things that you get in real world outside that you kind of miss when you do just like a static image. So you're able to kind of blend the two. But yeah, they're different. And a nerf doesn't care about, at least early on nerfs, it doesn't care about where an object really is in space. It's just trying to figure out what it looks like approximately. So, for example, if I were to look at a building, in fact, I have an example of this. I had a building I nerfed, and there was clouds overhanging the building, and I only saw the building from the front. And so then I took like almost a halfway turn. I'm almost looking from the side, and in the nerf, the clouds are actually in front of the building, but we know they're actually way up behind it in the sky. But to the nerf, it doesn't know where those clouds are, but it knows how to describe what they look like from the front of the building. So it doesn't matter where they are in space. They could be anywhere as long as there's clouds there and approximately where they would look like in real life. It doesn't matter. It's all an illusion. Versus like photogrammetry, it's going to do its best to actually place that object in the right place in 3D space. But as nerfs have also evolved, you're able to say things like, "Hey, I'm nerfing buildings." They could have a nerf model that's specifically for outdoor buildings and say everything in sky should be really far away. So they could start to say in the model, put things back behind it to help it. But still, they don't care. It doesn't really care where those clouds are as long as it looks right. So that's the two differences. Is photogrammetry is really trying to get like accurate geometry and describe it in triangles. Another one's just saying, I'm trying to make it look correct to you. I don't care if it's correct, just to look right. So those are like the inherent differences, just how data is stored and how it's trying to render it in front of your face.